Good morning, Evangel Church. Quick word to start the day on. Let me ask a question to start with. What's a better motivation for obedience? Gratitude or faith? We might quickly answer one or the other, but I want to read something that you might want to consider. And again, this is from a book by John Piper. It's called Future Grace. It says, gratitude is a joyful emotion for worship, but a dangerous motive for obedience. We are commanded in no uncertain terms to be thankful. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, and be thankful, Colossians 3:15. In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus, 1 Thessalonians 5:18. How can we not be thankful when we owe everything to God? But when it comes to obedience, gratitude is a dangerous motive. It tends to get expressed in debtor's terms, or what I sometimes call the debtor's ethic. For example, look how much God has done for you. Shouldn't you, out of gratitude, do much for Him? Or you owe God everything that you are and have. What have you done for Him in return? I have at least 3 problems with this kind of motivation. First, it's impossible to pay God back for all the grace He has given us. We can't even begin to pay Him back because Romans 11:35 and 36 says this: who has given a gift to Him, meaning God, that He might be repaid? The answer, nobody. For from Him and through Him and to Him are all things. To Him be glory forever. We can't pay Him back because He already owns all that we have to give Him. Second, even if we succeeded in paying Him back for all His grace to us, we could only succeed in turning grace into a business transaction. If we can pay Him back, it was not grace. To the one who works, his wage is not reckoned as grace, but as what is due, Romans 4:4. If you do try wage negotiations with God, you nullify grace. If friends try to show you a special favor of love by having you over for dinner, and you end the evening by saying that you will pay them back by having them over next week, you nullify grace and turn it into a trade. God does not like to have His grace nullified. He likes to have it glorified. Third, focusing on gratitude as an empowerment for obedience tends to overlook the crucial importance of future grace. Gratitude looks back to grace received in the past and feels thankful. Faith looks forward to grace promised in the future and feels hopeful. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, Hebrews 11:1. This faith is future grace. It is the power for obedience that preserves gracious quality of human obedience. Obedience does not consist in paying God back and thus turning grace into a trade. Obedience comes from trusting God for more grace, future grace, and thus magnifying infinite resources of God's love and power. I worked harder than any of them, though it was not I, but the grace of God which is with me, 1 Corinthians 15:10. The grace that enabled Paul to work hard in a life of obedience was the daily arrival of fresh supplies of grace. Faith looks to the promises like, I will be with you wherever you go, Joshua 1:9. And in that confidence, faith ventures in obedience to take the land. The biblical role of past grace, especially the cross, is to guarantee the certainty of future grace. He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, past grace, will He not also freely give us all things with Him, future grace? Romans 8:32. Trusting in future grace is the enabling strength of our obedience. The more we trust in future grace, the more we give God the opportunity in our lives to show the glory of His inexhaustible grace. So take a promise of future grace and do some radical act of obedience on it. God will be mightily honored. What a word to charge the day. Let's look at the grace that we've received with expectations of grace to come. And let's walk in obedience to the glory of God. Well, have a blessed day. Love you and miss you.